Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 22nd episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger. And wow, we are into it, folks. We are definitely into it at this point in the draft season. We are 10 days away from seeing who the Seahawks actually draft in the 2024 draft. A lot of stuff to go through. And first, I want to thank all the folks who have been members over at YouTube. And let me do this real quick. I'm going to copy the link to the chat for joining the YouTube membership if you haven't already done that. That's now in the chat. And let me double check something, make sure that that worked properly. And so, yeah, you should be good there and should be able to become a YouTube member. I wanted to make sure that was all working. Sorry, apologies. And let me welcome one of our absolute most active club level YouTube members, Hawks fan Matt Man. He says, "Good morning, Hawk bloggerinos. I wish you a good morning as well. Good morning to Matt Gilbert, who just joined. This is where things get real. The last few days, the teams are locking in their choices, evaluating what they're going to be able to do, and where I end up with is a feel that we need to go through and look at one, what's everyone else saying? I happen to think that most other people just are putting random stuff out there and aren't necessarily focusing that much on the Seahawks, but I am curious what's out there. There's a slew of new mock drafts. I will give you the rundown of where everybody has Seattle going in those mock drafts. I also want to go through, I don't know about you, but I like looking at the top, not the top 30 visits, the 30 visits. I also like looking at the combine visits. And what I haven't seen so far is anybody really go through both lists and look for where there's players that they've met on both and both situations, as well as what are the positions that they're bringing in? What does that tell us about where the Seahawks have interest? So I have gone through, and as best as I could, I've gone to a bunch of different sites because they don't all have the same lists. And I have not found one that I think is truly comprehensive. I think I have, I don't know, I think I might have the most comprehensive list as of today, April 15th. I will go through that so we all have the same information about who the 30 visits have been, as well as the combine visits. And there's a bit of a surprise there. As far as I can tell, there is only one player that the Seahawks have met at the combine and had a 30 visit with. I will reveal who that is when we get to that part of the show. I also, if we have time, I want to go along with you and look back through some of John Schneider's past draft trades so we can get a feel for what value he was giving up and what value he was receiving. In case you missed it, I did a show, I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday. I can't remember when it was, but I went through the realistic trade scenarios, and I used the Rich Hill trade value chart to look at who are some realistic teams the Seahawks could trade back with in the first round. I then literally yesterday, went through some of the most recent trades other teams have made for first round picks or to move up. And I did the Rich Hill value chart there. If you didn't see that, I got a few shorts going through it, but I will give you that information right here. Let's get started just with that because those folks probably are a little curious that might have missed that. I'm not going to go through each of the teams that made these trades, but I will just tell you what was traded for what. And the most recent, obviously, is the Vikings, who traded up for the Texans pick at 23. And what the Texans gave up was the 23rd pick and the 232nd pick, which is a 7th round pick. and they received pick 42, a second round pick, 188, and a 2025 second round pick. A second round pick in the following year is usually discount. I mean, future year picks can be discounted a varying amount. So usually at least about 10% of value. I generally drop it down around in value. Depending on how you value that will affect the actual trade, the trade-off. So what in this case, the team with the first round pick, Houston, they had 761 points of value that they traded. The first round pick at 23, 232nd pick, the seventh round, that's worth 761 points on the Rich Hill value chart. What they received in value, now again, I think this varies depending on how you value that second round pick in 2025, is 886 points. That's a 125 point premium that Houston received to give up that first round pick. You could take that down 50 points, 60 points if you want, depending on how conservative you want to be, and say maybe it's a 60-point premium. But that's a trade where there was a real premium paid to get that first round pick and move into the first round. And that's kind of what we were talking about when we did the show. Some folks are like, hey, like if there's a guy someone really wants, they're going to pay a premium to move up. And so the Seahawks might be able to get a good deal. Like, let's say that someone really wants Michael Penix and somehow he's still there, or there's an offensive tackle that one of the teams want, or a wide receiver. Well, so I went through 5 trades that were made on draft day. Now, the difference between this trade that I just went through, that was a pre-draft trade. You are going to pay a larger premium to make a trade before the draft than you would during draft day, because you're going to know who's available, who's gone. And so it's not the case in all situations, especially with quarterbacks, but in general, you're going to pay a bigger premium pre-draft to make a trade to move into the first round or move up than you would the day of the draft. So I went through 5 draft day trades last year that happened during 2023. And I'm not going to go through each individual trade, but I will tell you this. 4 out of the 5 trades had less than 10 points in value for the team that was trading out of it. And in fact, 2 of those 5 trades, the team that was moving back, like let's say they moved back from 9 to 10, or they moved back from 25 to 27, the team that moved back actually received less value, according to the Rich Hill trade value chart, than they gave up. And so that doesn't mean, we're talking about a team that gave up 1 point in value. These are by most interpretations, but the implication is still they are not paid up. And in fact, the worst of these trades was not someone who overpaid to move up. It was somebody who gave up too much to move back. That was actually New England, who had the 14th pick last year. They traded back to the Steelers at 17, and they received a 4th round pick. What that was worth was 1,004 points. What they gave up was 1,100 points. So they gave up almost 100 points in value to move back 3 spots. That's a bad trade. That is a bad trade. Now, I could go back and find out who they picked at 120, and we can debate whether it was really worked out or not. But the point is, if anything, there were teams more desperate to move back than there were teams desperate to move up. And so while we're all kind of debating, are the Seahawks going to move back, or are they going to stick and pick? We've also talked about they need to find a trading partner. Not only do they need to find a trading partner, but they need to find someone who's willing to offer real value. And at least based on last year's draft, I think we should temper our expectations that they're going to find somebody who wants to do that and that meets their needs. Again, as I said, I'd like to try to find time today to go through John Schneider's trades. I did not get a chance to do this ahead of time, so it'll be a little cumbersome for us to do together, but I know you will stick with us if we get there, because I think we'll learn from that what kind of value John Schneider requires to trade back and what's his history, and is there any change. we'll focus mostly on the first round. But as I've told you, and I tried to correct narratives out there, everyone says John Schneider only trades back. John Schneider only trades back in the first round. John Schneider trades up in every other round of the draft. All right. As recently as for DK Metcalf, he's traded up for Tyler Lockett. He's traded up for a number of players. So I don't know if I'll get to some of the trade ups, but I will definitely get to the first round trade backs if we get through everything else. I also want to welcome our patrons, patreon.com/hawkblogger. You can join there, get access to the audio versions of all of these shows, and you get access to the Slack channel where hundreds of other Seahawks fans are talking draft, talking Seahawks. It's a good crew. I know we've welcomed some new folks there lately and highly recommend you join there. Good morning to Eric Kinnanen, who just joined as a YouTube member. Welcome to him. If you missed shows, I will recommend that you definitely check out the show from yesterday. We had a great conversation with Rob Staten and Griffin Sturgeon, See Mike Spin Move. Went through 2 hours worth of draft talk, went through our top first round pick likes, our top second round pick, our top third round pick likes, went through a little bit at safety, talked about Rob's interview with Troy Fautanu. So lots of good stuff in there. 2 hours of great content for you there. As I said, Saturday, I went through the trade scenarios, and I think there was a lot to be learned from that. So if you haven't watched that or listened to that, I recommend it. Friday, I went through edge rushers, deep dive there. Thursday, I went through safety prospects, and I think that's a position that is definitely increasing in interest for me. And it's what's coming up, just to give you an idea of what's coming up. So this morning, I'm going to do that mock draft roundup, and we'll also go through the other pieces that I mentioned. Then this afternoon, so double dip today, double feature, 4 o'clock Pacific time, myself, Nathan Ernst, and Jeff Simmons will get together for another edition of Mock Draft Madness. And in that, we're going to do something that we have not done before. We are going to take over for every single team in the NFL and make every pick in that draft. The way that we're going to do that is we are going to divvy up the teams, and we're each going to be GM for about 10 teams and then go through and make picks. And we'll probably do, I guess we'll do like 3, maybe 4 round mocks so we can go through it a few different times. I don't want to do all the way through 7 rounds with all the picks. That would just take too long and starts getting a little bit annoying. But I think we'll see it. My guess is we'll do probably 3 to 4 round mocks. We're going to do that at 4 o'clock. I'm really looking forward to that because these simulators, as much fun as they are, every time we're like, that guy's not going to be there. That guy's not going to be there. And I trust what we will be able to do as we go through it more than I trust what's been going on in those simulators. And I think it'll give us a little bit of insight into, okay, who are the teams who could really spoil things for the Seahawks and maybe steal a player? Who are the teams that might actually really feel like they want to move up? So I will highly recommend you tune in or listen to the audio version on patreon.com/hawkblogger when we do that mock draft madness later today. And then tomorrow, I cannot wait. I'm very excited about tomorrow's show. We've got a couple of guests. Robert Mays, formerly of The Ringer, now of The Athletic, a fantastic evaluator. He's going to be on at 7:15 in the morning. And then Sam Monson of PFF, who is also a really good analyst, has very strong opinions, which I appreciate. He is going to be on at 8 o'clock. So we will have 2 guests tomorrow. And Wednesday, another great guest, Aaron Schatz of formerly Football Outsiders, the grandfather of DVOA, the creator of DVOA, will come on the show, and we will talk a little bit about what the analytics say about the Seahawks team, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. Maybe there's things we can learn as well about Mike McDonald. So looking forward to that conversation, and also just learning about where he's seeing trends in the NFL, anything else that's standing out for him statistically, analytically as he goes through. So I'm also working on getting Eric Edholm on the show from NFL.com. So we're working on finalizing dates to come on. So lots of great guests and content coming up this week. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm getting a comment that the stream is lagging. Is anyone else having issues with the stream? Please let me know. And I don't know what I can do for that, but I can kind of check it out if possible. But as far as I can tell, things should be normal. But if someone in chat can get back to me, that would be great. Someone else said it's good so far, no problems. Someone said to close out the stream and come back. I was doing the same thing. Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Welcome. Good morning to DT Cruiser, a new club level member for YouTube. Welcome, DT. Great to have you here. All right, let's get into some of these mock drafts. Okay. That was what I said the show's going to be about. It is not a huge amount of time to take here, but I did want to make a pass through of where certain folks are with the Seahawks. And I'm not going to go through drafts that are 10 days old. I'm going through drafts that are either in the last few days or new as of this morning. And let's start with a guy that's going to be on the show tomorrow at 8:00, Sam Monson of PFF. He just published his new mock draft this morning. And Sam, who, if you've listened to the PFF podcast, I recommend it. He and Steve Pelozzo, I'm going to have to figure out how to pronounce his name. I'll probably want to try to get Steve on the show as well at some point. Anyway, they have a great pod. They go through all the draft prospects in excruciating detail, but I love it. And Sam is adamant. The Seahawks have a huge gap in their interior line. It's easy. You just got to pick the best interior lineman with their first pick and you move on. Steve goes a little bit more back and forth, and he's like, I just hate taking interior linemen this high up in the draft. I'd want to trade back, or I'd want to take a different position, but maybe not. So I'm looking forward to talking to Sam about it, because I don't see it quite the same way as at least as the way Sam does. But Sam follows true to form. His first pick in this draft is Jackson Powers Johnson. So it's worth talking about. The reason that he goes Jackson Powers Johnson and not, let's say Troy Fautanu, is because Troy Fautanu's already gone in his draft. He's gone at 14 to the Saints. What about some of the other guys we've talked about? Well, he's got Jared Verse going 8th to the Falcons. He's got Talisi Fuaga going 7th to the Titans. So a lot of these guys that we've talked about, Brock Bowers has gone at 10 to the Jets. That's a very popular pick lately. He's got even Cooper DeJean. We don't know. I've heard the debates rage on. Cooper DeJean going at 15 to the Colts. And so he has Jackson Powers Johnson. I would debate there. He's got Byron Murphy going 2 picks later to the Bengals. I think personally that's a better pick. He's got Leatu Latu going 3 picks later to the Rams at 19. He's got Graham Barton going to the Dolphins at 21. I think that's a better pick. He's got Dallas Turner going 23 to the Patriots at edge, which is pretty fascinating. Be interested to talk to him about that. He is a big fan of Zach Frazier. He's got him going 27 to the Cardinals. Chop Robinson, we've talked about. He's going number 30 to the Ravens. Very Ravensy kind of thing to happen if that's what it happens. TJ Tampa, who's rising up a lot of boards, he's got him going 31st to the 49ers. So, excuse me, there's quite a few. He has Michael Penix Jr. going 34th to the Vikings. So he's got Penix in the second round. A number of these guys that we've talked about, he has going later. And be fun to talk with him about that tomorrow. If the Seahawks stick and pick at 16 and take Jackson Powers Johnson, I am going to be upset. I mean, I don't think they're going to play him at center. Maybe they would. But let's say they play him if they play him at center, they upgrade that position and they play Laken Tomlinson and Anthony Bradford at the guards, and then they upgrade the guards later. Or maybe they take a guard. If they took Jackson Powers Johnson in the first round, they took another guard in the fourth round, like they get a Christian Mahogany or they get someone else later in the draft, maybe a Mason McCormick that's more developmental, then I could handle that. Just getting Jackson Powers Johnson, who, from my perspective, really is a center. Sure, he could play guard, but he is a center. And he is also a center that I think is really, he's a guy that can climb to the second level vertically, as we heard from like Rob Rang and Brandon Thorne. But he's not a puller. He's not an outside zone kind of guy. He's not a horizontal mover. And so people like, oh, he's like, I think they've compared Zach Frazier more to Creed Humphrey than Jackson Powers Johnson, because Creed Humphrey is a mover. Creed Humphrey can get out on the edge. He's an extremely athletic center. That's not what Jackson Powers Johnson is. He's just a big, square people mover, which is fine. But I really think that's not getting appropriate value out of that pick. I would be more comfortable if they traded back into the 20s and ended up, they got the second round pick that they need, and then added him there, and then added a defensive tackle in the second, and then added a guard in the third, which I doubt they'll do, but that something like that I could handle. But I'm not there for JPJ at 16. That's very uncomfortable for me in general. I'm not going to go through this depth in all the mock drafts, but I'm going to give you a few. So, these are a few folks at NFL.com. Okay. Gennaro Felice has Troy Fautanu. He had a recent mock draft going to the Seahawks. Chad Reuter, we'll talk about this one a little bit more. He has a 4-round mock. Let's see if I can pull that one up. 1 second, folks. Or does he have a 5-round mock? He has a 5-round mock. There it is. Yeah, Chad Reuter has a 5-round mock. He is a decent draft analyst, so I think it's worth at least hearing what he has going on. He has the Seahawks making a trade with the Philadelphia Eagles, popular trade target we talked about. He has him trading with the Eagles to get a 2nd-round pick. And the Seahawks give up one of their 4th-round picks, the top of the 4th-round pick, to help get that 2nd-round pick in return. And he has the Eagles selecting Graham Barton at 16. That would be something. That would be something, because Graham Barton's become one of my favorite players in this draft. I love his projection as a guard. I love the fact that he's not one of those guys that can't do anything well, so you say he can play all the positions and that's a value. Those guys stink in general. What I like is someone who's really good at a position and just can excel. I think Graham Barton can be a very good interior offensive line player and maybe an elite interior offensive line player. And I think he can be a pretty good tackle as well. So he's really a 5-position guy that could potentially, he's like Ethan Posick if Ethan Posick was really good. And I don't think Ethan Posick was really good. I think Graham Barton's a much better athlete and a much stronger player. So I would have trouble seeing the Eagles trade into that position and get Graham Barton, but it is what it is. He has Chop Robinson going to the Rams at 19. He has the 49ers moving up with the Dolphins to 21 to pick Talisi Fuaga, who he's got falling all the way to 21. Can you imagine if Fuaga was available and the Seahawks traded back and then missed out on him and he went to the 49ers? That would be rough. That would be rough. So at 22, which is where the Eagles were, and now the Seahawks are based on this trade, he has them picking Johnny Newton. So Griff would be thrilled. I think some other folks would be thrilled. I've been pretty clear. I don't want Johnny Newton. I don't want him in the first round. And I don't think he's going to last to where he would be picked in the second round if the Seahawks get a second round pick. I don't think his ceiling is high enough. And there's enough video of this that when he becomes an all-pro game wrecker, you can all just show me these videos over and over again. But my instinct there is there's just not a high enough ceiling to go there. If you're curious, he has Byron Murphy going at 11 to the Vikings. He has got Jared Verse going at 12. He's got Dallas Turner going 9. So that's where some of those other guys are already gone. And I really do feel like Byron Murphy, I think it's a dream to think he's going to last to the Seahawks. It would be a dream. But if he's available, that's probably a much tougher move for the Seahawks to make. But he does have the move down and get Johnny Newton. I don't think this is unrealistic, by the way. Me not being a fan of Newton at this pick does not mean I think it's unrealistic. In fact, I think it could very well be realistic. Interestingly, he's got the Vikings picking Bo Nix at 23. He has got Peyton Wilson, the linebacker from NC State, a first-round draft choice to the Green Bay Packers at 25. That's a fascinating one. This is a guy that everybody has moved out of the first round, and some people have moved him out of the second round because of medicals, but every single person is like, this guy's got elite talent. When he's on the field, he's great. I think it's debatable how far you push a guy like that down your board. If you've got a guy that has potential all-pro talent and your biggest concern is medicals, if the medicals come back good and you feel good about how he can fit and how you can protect him, then he becomes at lowest a second-round pick, and he could sneak into the first round. I don't think that's crazy. Interestingly, a name I didn't mention that has been mentioned a ton for the Seahawks in Chad Reuter's mock draft, Troy Fautanu. He has him all the way down at 26 to Tampa Bay. Can you imagine the Seahawks trading back from 16 to 22, picking up a second-round pick? We're feeling good. They get to 22. Fautanu's still there. And they call out Johnny Newton. I mean, that would be rough. That would be rough. He also has Latu going to the Bills at 28, which is later than most. He has Patrick Paul, the offensive tackle from Houston, as a first-round pick at 31 to the Dolphins. I think that is a stretch. Max Melton, who is a guy that's been really popular in a lot of these conversations, he's got him in the first round. I don't know if he's going that high, but he's got him going to the Jags, who's got a trade projected with the Chiefs. It's interesting. Chad's draft does have a number of trades, and I think there's a decent amount of realistic ones. He has got the Raiders at the top of the second round picking Michael Penix Jr. He's got Cooper Beebe at 35 to the Cardinals. He's got Jordan Morgan, who's a guy that increasingly is of interest to me as a guard, going 36 to the Commanders. Ladd McConkey, who we talked about yesterday on the show, he's got going 38 to the Titans. I don't know if McConkey makes it out of the first round. I find it hard to believe the 49ers and Chiefs will pass, and Bills would pass on McConkey. Who does he have the Bills picking in that first round? I'm curious. I got to go back to that. He has got come on. He has got the Bills. Where are the Bills? Did he have them trading? Oh, there he is. Oh, he has the Bills picking up Latu. That seems wild to me. I can't imagine the Bills are not going to come out of this first round with one of those receivers, but there is depth, so maybe there's something to it. He's got Marshawn Nealand, who we talked a lot about yesterday, at 48 to the Jags. That's 2 picks ahead of where the Seahawks would be picking at number 50, which is he's got the Eagles giving the Seahawks the better of their second round picks at 50. And he's also got Mason Smith, the defensive tackle out of LSU, going 1 pick before the Seahawks in the second round at 49. So what does that leave the Seahawks with? Trevin Wallace. Trevin Wallace, the linebacker, at pick 50. That is a wild selection to me at that position in the draft. If you're curious, where does Sterling have Trevin Wallace? He has 5.83, which is an average backup or special teams player. And it's going to be a while to count down how far he is on the linebacker list. But I mean, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. He's got him as the 18th ranked linebacker on his list. That would be rough. For me, that would be rough as a second round pick. What's part of the reason? Guess what? He's got Jackson Powers Johnson going at 51 in this draft, 1 pick later. So, I don't know about that. He's got Michael Hall Jr., who how I feel about, going 2 picks later to the Los Angeles Rams. No. He has got Edgerrin Cooper, a linebacker who I don't think, because I have questions about his coverage instincts, I don't feel as good about for the Seahawks, but he's clearly going to be a very good NFL linebacker. He's got him going 4 picks later to the Browns. You've got Javon Bullard, 7 picks later to the Bucks. You've got Tavondre Sweat, 9 picks later to the Texans. So here's another guy who still thinks Sweat is going to be a second round pick. I think that's what's going to happen too. He's got Zach Zinter in the second round to the Lions at 61. He's got Mason McCormick in the second round at 64. So if you're telling me Johnny Newton is the first pick after a trade back, and you had Troy Fautanu on the board and you let him go, and then in the second round at pick 50, you're sitting there pretty. 50 comes up and you've got the choice between Jackson Powers Johnson. Maybe you don't need him because you just got Fautanu, but Jackson Powers Johnson, Michael Hall Jr., Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, Tavondre Sweat, Zach Zinter. You got these guys and your pick is Trevin Wallace. I would lose my mind. I would be livid if that is the Seahawks make the move. They get the second round pick. They even get a 50th pick, which is pretty high given what they could probably pull off. They give up one of their 4th round picks to do it. And you get Trevin Wallace. No way. I am not for that at all. What about in the 3rd round? If nothing else, Reuters draft is entertaining. In the 3rd round, he goes, let's see, where the Seahawks are all the way down at 81. He has got, let's see some players ahead of them. He's got TJ Tampa all the way down at 65, where we're just talking about Sam Monson having him in the 1st round. Braylon Trice at 66, so high third round to the Cardinals. That would be interesting to watch him play there. He's got Troy Franklin down in the third round to the Commanders. I wonder about that with Franklin. I think people are going to be very split on his eval. He ran an absolutely awful shuttle at the combine. I mean, his ability to stay on the line as he ran, not the shuttle. What's it called? Gauntlet. The gauntlet. He just did really poorly on that. But I like him as a receiver. He's got a great receiver build. Interesting player. I think some people are going to have him as a second rounder, high second rounder. Some people are going to have him as a third or fourth rounder. I really believe that. They've got Roman Wilson going to the Patriots at 68. A guy that we should probably talk more about at some point, Tanner Bortolini, who's a center, but I think some people think he can play guard. He's got him going at 69. Ricky Pearsall, 71st to the Cardinals. I mean, I really do think there's a chance Pearsall makes it to the third round. Tyler Nubin, he's got as a third round pick to the Jets. Chris Jenkins, he's got as a third round pick. He's got Luke McCaffrey as a third round pick. I don't see that. That would be surprising. He's got Theo Johnson going to the Commanders, 4 picks ahead of the Seahawks. He has got Layden Robinson. Layden Robinson, a guard out of Texas A&M, going to the Seahawks in the third round. Lance Zierlein has him as a 5.94 grade. I'm going to pull him up on Mr. Brugler's list. He is 12th on Brugler's list as a 4th or 5th round pick. So I don't know if Mr. Reuter is just a Seahawks hater and trying to screw us with these picks, but we've now got Johnny Newton, Trevin Wallace in the second round, and Layden Robinson in the third round. Immediately after Layden Robinson, and immediately after the Seahawks pick, he has Austin Booker, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., Malachi Corley. Like, I'd be more interested in any of those players. He's got Zach Frazier, Brandon Dorless, Junior Colson, Mike Sainristril, all going after Cam Kitchens. He's got Christian Boyd in the third round. That's fascinating. Cedric Gray, Cole Bishop. Those are all names that he has going after the Seahawks in the third round. I don't know, man. I would go so crazy if that is how this draft played out. Now let's go to the fourth round. He has Chris Braswell all the way, the edge player from Alabama, all the way in the fourth round to the Titans. I actually don't think that's crazy. I just think edge players are valued high enough. I think Braswell is pretty stiff, and I'm just not sure I see a lot of big upside. He's got Spencer Rattler in the fourth round to the Giants. Drew Lock, enjoy that competition. He's got Cam Little, a kicker, going in the fourth round to the Vikings. I would love it if they drafted a kicker later. He's got Jalen Polk going in the fourth round to the Falcons. Malik Washington, who's a guy I like, going at 111 to the Jets. He's got Christian Haynes going in the fourth round. A lot of people have him in the second, the guard. He's got Edufan Ulofoshio from Washington, the linebacker, going in the fourth round to the Bengals. That's pretty high. What he has going to the Seahawks in the fourth round. Now, remember, they gave up their first of their fourth round picks. It's part of their trade in this mock to the Eagles. And by the way, let's just take a look to see what the Eagles selected. They take Bo Brady, safety from Maryland. The Eagles take him at that pick. So if the Seahawks had been there, some interesting players would have been available, but they weren't. He has them taking Jalix Hunt, edge player out of Houston Christian University, in the fourth round. Mr. Zerline has him as a 6.14 graded player, good backup with the defense potential to develop into a starter. He's got some great athletic ability, but I mean, in the 4th round, if that's what happens, I'm not losing my mind, as long as the other 3 picks haven't been what they've been so far in this draft. But interestingly, some of the guys he has coming after the Seahawks pick, Ruka Roaro, he's got going in the 4th round. I also don't think that's totally crazy. I think he's very raw, but he's got a lot of the parts. Those are like 3rd to 5th round pick kind of guys. A lot of people have him 2nd round. I don't see 2nd round value for Ruka Roaro. Some other guys he's got going after the Jalix Hunt Seahawks pick in the 4th round. Kalen Bullock, the safety out of USC, who I know Griff's not a fan of, but certainly has some interesting athletic ability. Mekai Wingo, defense tackle out of LSU. Christian Mahogany. This is where I think Christian Mahogany belongs. I think he's a 4th round guard. I would certainly be more interested in him than some of the other players that they mentioned. D'Adrian Taylor Demerson, he's got going in this round after the Seahawks pick. So we won't go through the 5th round of his draft because the Seahawks don't have a 5th round pick at this point. But I mean, if you lost track, what the Seahawks ended up with in Chat Reuters for 5-round mock draft is a trade back from 16 to 22 with the Eagles. They give up their top of the 4th round pick to get Eagles 22nd pick and the Eagles 50th pick. That trade works for me. I'm okay with that trade. So that's fine. But then it falls apart. He picks Johnny Newton when Troy Fautanu's on the board. He picks Trevin Wallace at 50 when T'Vondre Sweat and Jackson Powers Johnson and a bunch of these other players are available. That's the worst of these picks. 3rd round, he goes Layden Robinson when there's a bunch of other players available. 4th round, he goes Jalix Hunt. If this is the draft the Seahawks come out with in the first 4 rounds, Johnny Newton, Trevin Wallace, Layden Robinson, Jalix Hunt, there will be a march on the VMAC. Like, that is not acceptable. So I almost feel like I got to get Chad Reuter on the show. Let me see if I can reach out to him. It could be entertaining to have that conversation, but I'm like sick to my stomach even imagining that being possible. Let's quickly go through a couple others. Rhett Lewis had a recent mock. He has Troy Fautanu going to the Seahawks. Mel Kyper. Always got to do the Kyper. I think they just did this morning, Kyper and Yates, maybe. But I think that they just did a new mock draft, a 3-round mock draft. Yes. And they have going to the Seahawks at 16, Byron Murphy, defensive tackle out of Texas. Whew. I feel like I got to exhale there. Thank God. Like, if that's the case, I honestly will just exhale. Like, okay, good. They got someone exciting. They got someone powerful, strong. That's what I want in this draft. I want the Seahawks to get stronger, tougher. Yes, I want them to get faster. Yes, I want them to get better. But I want them to be able to be a team that does not get their ass pushed around the field by the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are a mediocre team. I don't want to feel like every time they step on the field with the 49ers, they have no chance because they can't control the line of scrimmage. So give me beef. Give me strength. That's what I want to see in this draft. If you get Byron Murphy, I think you're on the right track. Worth noting, ahead of the Seahawks pick, they have Troy Fautanu going to the Jets at 10. So they have Fautanu off the board at 10. They do have Talisi Fuaga going 18 to the Bengals. So this would be the Seahawks picking Murphy over Fuaga. How do you guys feel about that? If Fuaga is available and Murphy is available, who do you want? Tell me in chat. I'm really curious who you want. I want Murphy in that case. I like Fuaga. He's great. But Murphy for me, I just feel like adds something to this team that I really want. So I'd go Murphy, but I wouldn't hate the Fuaga pick. They have the Rams picking Latu. They have Graham Barton going to the Steelers at 20. So again, these are useful because you're kind of thinking about who might pick the guys you like if you trade back. Well, Steelers are certainly one of those teams. The Dolphins at 21 pick Jared Verse. So Jared Verse, Graham Barton, Fuaga, and Murphy are all available at 16. You know, for me, Verse Murphy is a tough pick. Hear from one of our members, Rick R, that he wants Murphy at that pick. I love it. They have got Cooper DeJean going to the Packers at 25. They've got Chop Robinson going to the Bucks at 26. They've got Darius Robinson going to the Lions at 29. I really don't want that to be a Seahawks pick. Let's hope that's not the case. Kyper has the Rams moving to the top of the first round with a trade with the Panthers. And who do they have him picking? Michael Penix Jr. Ugh. Yuck. Don't please. Like, there's a lot of ways Michael Penix Jr. could end up in LA and we could be playing him multiple times a year. I don't want to see it, but it could happen. They've got Roger Rosengarten going to the Cardinals at 35. Man, his draft stock has been skyrocketing. He's a first round pick in some people's drafts. Second round pick almost at worst at this point. Let's see. They got Bo Nix going to the Giants at 38. Lad McConkey all the way down at 39 to the Panthers. Mason Smith, 42nd pick to the Texans. That is quite high for Mason Smith. I think that's too high. Malachi Corley going to the Falcons at 43. Jackson Powers Johnson at 44. This is where, like, Jackson Powers Johnson, for me, I'm much more comfortable with him as a second round pick than I am with him at 16. Like, that was a rough one when we started out today. That's where Sam Monson had him going. Ricky Pearsall in the second to the Saints. Jalen Polk in the second. I don't know about that. Marshawn Nealand at 48. I think that's two of these drafts that have had him around 48. Interesting edge player. Johnny Newton. They've got Johnny Newton going 49th to the Bengals. Now, if that happens, I'm going to be kind of smiling ear to ear because that's where I have Johnny Newton. I have him as a second round talent. I know he's put on amazing tape, but I won't drone on about it. But interesting to see Kyper and Yates have him at 49. Max Melton, who's been climbing boards, not really an interest for the Seahawks, but they have him going at 50 to the Eagles. Jalen McMillan. So they have both both Huskies receivers going in the second round. They've got Mike Sainristil going to the Panthers at 52. I really like Sainristil, and I wouldn't shock me if there's a reason the Seahawks end up with him. Edgerrin Cooper at 53 to the Eagles. So that's just, I'm kind of going through some of these players that could be available if the Seahawks were to trade back. They've got Troy Franklin as a second round pick, which I think is accurate. Cooper Beebe's up here. Peyton Wilson's at 58 in this one. I think that's probably more realistic. They got Cole Bishop as a second round pick. They've got Javon Bullard going immediately after Cole Bishop. So 60 and 61 are two safeties, Cole Bishop and Javon Bullard. They have Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle for Florida State, going 64. So then we get, so in this mock draft, they don't have the Seahawks trading pack. They haven't taken Byron Murphy. I got to say, if you told me my choice was come out of this draft at the first two rounds with Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton and Trevin Wallace, I am taking Byron Murphy 100 times out of 100. Now, again, it's all on recording. You can come back and shove this in my face when it looks like I'm a crazy person later, but I feel so much better about Byron Murphy than those two guys. Round 3, we get in, and some interesting names start going off the board. Chris Braswell, Christian Haynes, Roman Wilson, Chris Jenkins, Junior Colson they have going at 70. This is where I have him. I have him as a third-round pick. I think there's a chance Junior Colson could be available for the Seahawks in the third round. Has to fall just right, but I think he is more a third-round talent than a second-round talent. Jaden Hicks, who I'm really starting to like for the Seahawks at safety, goes 72. So he's another name that could be there. They've got Bub Means going in the third round. I mean, there's some places that have him in the 7th. So that's an interesting pick. Spencer Rattler, they have going at 76 to the Broncos. So pretty close to the Seahawks pick at 81. They've got Ruka Roaro going in the third round. I think that's a reasonable place. I still think, third, fourth is kind of where I have him. Javon Baker, the wide receiver, dynamic wide receiver, going to the Bengals at 80, right before the Seahawks. And at 81, Seahawks have picked Byron Murphy at 16, according to this mock. Who do they get at 81? They've had to wait patiently. They got Zach Zinter. I think Seahawks fans would be pretty happy if those were their 2 picks in the first 3 rounds. Byron Murphy, Zach Zinter. Now, I could quibble because guess who the very next pick is in the mock draft? 82nd pick to the Indianapolis Colts, Dominic Pooney. So we talked about this yesterday on the show with Rob and Griff. I totally get Zach Zinter. I love Zach Zinter. I would be happy to have Zach Zinter. Dominic Pooney is a guy that I feel like is a little bit more high risk, high reward. I think athletically he has a little bit more to offer. He has a lower floor. He also has the potential to play tackle. So if they both were available and they went with Zinter, I wouldn't hate it. This is not one that I would go crazy about, but I do feel like Pooney, it would be my pick, my preferred pick there. I'd feel safer with Zach Zinter. I'd feel like, okay, at least we're not going to be absolutely trash at the position. Pooney is a risk, but I think that there's a little bit more upside there. Now, here's where it gets a little hard. 3 picks later at 84, he has got the Pittsburgh Steelers picking Michael Hall Jr. Now, they picked Byron Murphy. So realistically, I'm not going to be upset. The Seahawks don't double up on 3 techs. They don't need another 3 tech after that. But it would be hard to see Michael Hall Jr. on the board there. That's a great third round pick. If you can get him in the third round, that is a fantastic third round pick. They've got Tyler Nubin going to the Texans at 86, who, Griff and Rob, big fans of. Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, big fans of. Lance Zierlein, Dane Brugler, like everyone's a big fan of. So that could be a guy that you wish you would have picked. Cedric Gray, the linebacker they have available going later. We talked about Kalen Bullock, him available. Interestingly, they've got Brennan Jackson out of Washington State going in the third round. You've seen me pick him for the Seahawks many times in the mock drafts in like the 5th, 6th rounds. I think he is an interesting edge player. I don't want him that early, but interesting player. They've also got Cam Kitchens going at 93. Anyone else that's of interest? They got Brandon Dorlus going to the Rams at 99. So that is what I think is a pretty interesting 3-round mock from Field Yates and Mel Kyper Jr. How would you guys feel? Tell me in chat. How would you feel if the Seahawks had to stick and pick and they took Byron Murphy at 16? And remember, that's with Fuaga available. So Byron Murphy available, Byron Murphy at 16. And then they get Zach Zinter in the third round. How would you guys feel about that? For me, that's like a B plus if that's their first 3 rounds. to get into the A territory, they've got to get a second round pick. If they want to get an A in the first 3 rounds, they have to get a second round pick. Michael said he sent a super chat, but never showed up. Michael, tell me what you asked, and I will go ahead and answer. So apologies if I missed it. Usually super chats show up for me, but I did not see it. So please ask the question again, and I will be happy to answer it. Hawks fan Matt Mann says the Broncos waiting until 76 to get a QB seems unlikely. Could be true. I will keep going, but I will wait on Michael's question. I definitely want to respond to super chats as they come in. Here, what do we hear from chat here? Michael just says it was a tip and a thank you. Well, thank you for that. I really, really appreciate it. All the support we can get for the show is great. And certainly having a lot of folks tuning in each morning is a fun, and it's a fun way for me to start the day too. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it, because I definitely enjoy it. And it's gotten me all pumped up for this draft. I'm ready. I'm sure you guys are feeling the same way. So yeah, like Eshwar says safe high floor picks. We're talking about the Byron Murphy, Zach Zinter. Reflect the Sun says Murphy is greater than Fuaga. Jay Dellis 94 says if Verse is there and we get Murphy, I'm sick. I hear you. Like, I love Jared Verse. So like Verse and Fuaga, passing on both of those guys. But then again, you get Verse and you pass on Murphy and Fuaga. Like, I'm not sure that's going to be any better. DMW said rather have Sweat than Murphy. Like, I don't think Sweat has any chance of going in the first round, but I agree with you. Like, I still feel T'Vondre Sweat has the chance to make the biggest impact on the Seahawks right away. You heard me say that I want the Seahawks to be able to step on the field and not be overmatched. T'Vondre Sweat's a guy that immediately changes that equation. He's I think the only guy that immediately changes. Maybe Fautanu, I could say the same thing, at least on offense. They could start pushing people around. Fuaga, similarly. But there is something about being able to stop the run that just makes the rest of the defense work. If you have to pass against the Seahawks defense, and now you're throwing into Reek Woolen, you're throwing into Devin Witherspoon, you're throwing into Trey Brown, you're throwing into what I think is the teeth of that defense. You're throwing into Jerome Baker and Dodson and whoever else they end up getting at linebacker. I just feel like that is a huge difference. And T'Vondre Sweat is a one-player solution. I don't believe T'Vondre Sweat is going to be a bust in the way that even if he is overweight, he is still going to help you stop the run. If he turns into a complete imbecile who's just out of shape, doesn't care, parties, like if he's like the worst case scenario T'Vondre Sweat, then sure, that's a bad pick. But my evaluation is he's going to have seen and heard how much money he cost himself with this latest DUI. I think the floor for him in some ways is improved because this happened. I know that sounds crazy, but I think there's a chance that he will have really understood the implications. He's going to be on an even shorter leash coming into the league. And I just think T'Vondre Sweat is a guy that makes a huge difference for this team. So you're not going to hear me argue about that. Hawks fan Matt Mann says, if there's a blue chipper at 16 who isn't necessarily a big need, like tight end or wide receiver, would you want to take him or move back? Wide receiver is an easy one. I'm moving back. I mean, even if, I mean, this is crazy. Like Malik Neighbors or Roma Dunze is available. Then you start having like, okay, you probably need to make that selection. But outside of those guys, I think you got to move back from a receiver. If Brock Bowers is there, it really depends on the trade offer you get, but I'm moving back pretty comfortably there. I just feel like there's other positions that you need. And if you know someone's moving up for Bowers, it means they're not taking the guy that you need. So I would trade back. Thank you for the question, Hawks fan, Matt Man. All right, let's sweep through a couple other mock drafts. Bruce Feldman has Troy Fautanu going to the Seahawks. USA Today's latest today has Troy Fautanu going to the Seahawks. Nate Tice has Graham Barton going at 16 to the Seahawks. That's an interesting one. Nate's a worthwhile guy to listen to. CBS Sports has Jared Verse going to the Seahawks. The Draft Network released their latest mock today. Excuse me. They have Troy Fautanu going to the Seahawks. So if you're keeping score at home, out of the 12 mock drafts that I went through in the first round, in the 11 mock drafts I went through, you've got Troy Fautanu, by far the most popular pick. He is 6 out of 11. After that, it's all individuals. One has Byron Murphy, one has Johnny Newton, one has Graham Barton, one has Jackson Powers Johnson, one has Jared Verse. So it's kind of like Fautanu the field, based on what's going on mock drafts this morning. So we went through all the mock drafts as I said that we would. Let's talk about visits, because this is another thing that I think has been confusing. At least when I look up, there's different lists of different people. And so I want to go through 30 visits and combine visits and tell you something that I teased at the beginning, which is, by my calculations, which are very possibly inaccurate, but I did my best here, and usually that's pretty good. There's only one player that has been visited by the Seahawks at the combine and came to Seattle for a 30 visit. One player. I will tell you who that is after I go through the list of all these guys. So you're gonna hear it, because the combine visits that I was able to track down. Here's the names: Junior Colson, Chris Jenkins, Dallas Turner, Marshawn Nealand, Jaden Daniels. That's a hopeful one. Johnny Newton, Trevin Wallace, Braylon Trice, Mike Sainristril, Jaheim Bell, tight end, Byron Murphy, Josh Newton, a cornerback, Drake May, also hopeful, Graham Barton, Zach Zinter, Jaquan Jackson, a wide receiver, and Michael Pratt, a quarterback. So if you are keeping track there, that is 3 quarterbacks: Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Pratt. Okay, so that's 3 quarterbacks that they visited at the combine. Linebacker, they visited Junior Colson and Trevin Wallace, who we heard in that very disturbing mock draft from Chad Reuter going to the Seahawks in the second round. Edge, they met with Dallas Turner and Marshawn Nealand, as well as Braylon Trice. So that's 3 edge players. Okay, 3 quarterbacks, 3 edge players, 2 linebackers. They met with Chris Jenkins, Johnny Newton, and Byron Murphy. That is 3 defensive tackles. Okay. After that, Graham Barton and Zinter, those guys are both interior offensive linemen. And then a couple of cornerbacks. I think the Sainristril thing is interesting. If you hear people talk about, Joel Klatt will talk about this, but other people talk about the best player on that fantastic Wolverines national championship defense was Sainristril. He's a nickel corner. In some ways, he's kind of like Brian Branch, who went last year to the Lions. He's kind of like Devin Witherspoon, although he's not really an outside corner. He's much more of a pure nickel. But he's a difference maker. And I would not hate it if we hear the Seahawks call his name in the first 3 rounds. Depends on how things fall. But I think he is a excellent football player. And interesting that they met with him. Another name that's worth just paying attention to, Jaheim Bell, tight end. He's a mover. Like, he's an interesting player there. So they met with him at the combine. All right. So now let's talk about 30 visits. And remember, 30 visits are not top 30, even though I say it all the time and I try to keep myself from I try to learn to not say it, but it's just a 30 visit. Does not mean these are the top 30 guys they're interested in at all. In many cases, it's about guys that they want to get more information on. They get to do medical evaluations. These could be undrafted free agents. These could be late round picks. It can also be guys that they want to get more information on early. Okay, so here are the 30 visits. Grayson Murphy, not Gabriel Murphy, Grayson Murphy, the edge from UCLA. Malachi Corley, wide receiver. Tyrese Knight, linebacker. John Rice Plumlee, quarterback. Christian Boyd, defensive tackle. Bo Nix, quarterback. Spencer Rattler, quarterback. Tavondre Sweat, nose tackle. Chop Robinson, edge. Jared Verse, edge. Theo Johnson, tight end. Travis Glover, interior lineman, offensive lineman. Michael Jarrell, interior offensive lineman. Quantez Stiggers, cornerback. Cam Kitchens, safety. Matt Gonsalves, which is what someone suggested his name is pronounced as. He is a tackle turn guard, I think. I don't think. I know. Juwan Briggs, defensive tackle. Nathaniel Watson, linebacker. Michael Dowell, safety. One other name. Byron Murphy. So now you know, if you listened carefully, who is the one player the Seahawks met with at the combine and had a 30 visit with. His name's Byron Murphy. So I don't know how much of a tell that is. But if I'm like zeroing in on a lot of different things, I think the Matt Miller statement that he came out with like a week ago, where he said the floor, the absolute lowest in this draft that Byron Murphy can go is 16 to the Seahawks, because they will go and they will grab him. I think that's true. I believe that. I think it is far more likely the Seahawks will go defensive tackle in the first round than offensive guard. It depends on how things fall. If Murphy's gone, things change. But I think Murphy, for a lot of reasons, makes a ton of sense for what the Seahawks would want. And there's some evidence here as the only guy that they made a 30 visit with and a combine visit with. I see in chat someone saying that Braden Fisk made a visit. Let's double check. It does look like, yeah, they met with him at the scouting combine. All right, so that's one I missed. Thank you for that. That's why we're all here doing this together. I'm going to add him to my list. Braden Fisk, defensive tackle. He was a combine visit. So that makes it 1, 2, 3, 4 defensive tackles they met with at the combine. And then you talk about 30 visits, add in Christian Boyd, Tavondre Sweat, and Juwan Briggs to that list. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They've met with 7 defensive tackles. If you don't think the Seahawks are interested in adding to their defensive line. I got news for you. You are flat wrong. They are going to add to their defensive line, and it is a priority. We are going to see, I told you this on the very first show I did of the Hawk Blogger Mornings. Mike McDonald values defensive linemen, defensive tackles differently than Pete Carroll did. And you're going to see it in how they build out this defense. If I look at other positions, okay? Let's hold on. I'm going to do something real quick. No, I think I can do this. All right. Let's sort. So they met with 6 edge players. Dallas Turner, Marshawn Nealon, Braylon Trice, Grayson Murphy, Chop Robinson, Jared Verse. That's a lot of edge players when you drafted an edge player in each of the last 2 second rounds. So if you think the Seahawks aren't like, oh, we got enough, we're good on edge, I got news for you. I don't think that's the case. I think this is more of a John Schneider tendency than a Mike McDonald tendency. But from a positional value perspective, from finding an alpha edge rusher, I think John is doing his homework there. I think Braylon Trice is an interesting name to watch. Wouldn't shock me if that's a 3rd round pick if he makes it that far. Linebacker, which we think is a big need, they've only met with 4. Junior Colson, Trevin Wallace, Tyrese Knight, and Nathaniel Watson. A lot of the guys they met with, I think, are later round picks. Junior Colson's the one guy, he was a combine visit, who I think could go as high as the 2nd round. I think that's realistic, but I think is really a 3rd round pick. Guard, interior offensive line, which we know is a need. They've met with 5 guys: Graham Barton, Zach Zinter, Travis Glover, Michael Jarrell, and Matt Gonsalves. At least 3 of those guys are later round picks, okay? You're not taking them too early. Barton and Zinter could be earlier, obviously. Barton's first. I don't think Zinter, in a lot of cases, is being mocked in the 2nd round. Don't know, but I mean, I think he's an earlier pick. Now, the other position that is fascinating here. Remember, we're talking about they clearly need a guard. It's a big deal. They met with 5 guys. They don't clearly need an edge. They met with 6 guys. They don't clearly need defensive line, although I think it's pretty clear. And they met with 7 guys. Quarterback, they met with 6 dudes. So they met with Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Pratt, John Rice Plumlee, Bo Nix, and Spencer Rattler. And you can assume add 7 because Ryan Grubb knows Michael Penix Jr. inside and out. So they didn't need a visit with Michael Penix. They know him. So that's a lot of quarterbacks that they've met with for a team that does not have a 2nd round pick. And it's not clear where they're going to pick a quarterback after they traded to get Sam Howell. Safety, I think, is an interesting and important need. They've only met with 2. Cam Kitchens, Michael Dowell. Tight end, a pretty clear need for this team. They've only met with 2. Jaheim Bell, Theo Johnson. Either one of those guys would be pretty interesting. I think you're going to have to pick them probably in the 3rd round to get them. Maybe the 4th round. And then wide receiver, they've only met with 2, Jaquan Jackson and Malachi Corley. I think Corley's a really interesting player for the Seahawks. I don't know if it's going to fit where they're going to pick, but he's certainly an interesting player. So I think when you go through the 30 visits, it's an interesting tell. Defensive tackle's real. I mean, and I think that's where they're going to go in the 1st round. I'm bracing for if they don't get Murphy, they're going to take Newton, and I'm not going to be happy. But that I think you could almost guess is more likely. If I was a betting person, I would bet Byron Murphy and Johnny Newton over all these offensive linemen we've been talking about, over Fatanu, over Graham Barton. That's not what I want, but just what I know of John Schneider and the way that they approach things, I think they're going to go defensive tackle first. They could go edge. So I think if Byron Murphy's gone and Jared Verse is available and Johnny Newton's available, then I think Verse becomes a real possibility. But this idea that they're just going to go interior offensive line, I think it's off. I don't think that's what they're going to do. If they do it, I'll be so happy. It would really show that John Schneider values that in a way that I think he hasn't demonstrated he does. But folks, keep this in mind. If you're like arguing with me, you're thinking, what? Like, no way they're going to do this. Well, what is the evidence that John Schneider values the interior offensive line enough to spend the only pick he has in the first 2 rounds of this draft in the first year that he is the man in Seattle? What's the evidence that he's going to spend that on interior offensive line? Just because it's a need? I don't think that's good evidence. And if it is so important, why wasn't it a priority in free agency when there are a lot of options for him to go after? Not just this year, but multiple years has not been a priority. Why is he content with Laken Tomlinson as his veteran free agent addition? Why is he content with Anthony Bradford going in essentially without competition as a starter at right guard? Why is he okay with Olu Olutimi and Nick Harris being the only centers on the roster? And you can go back through the years. There's just not evidence to make the case that John Schneider values interior offensive line enough to make it his first overall pick in a draft where he does not have a second round pick. We'll see. We will see. But I think I'm bracing for that being the reality. I am bracing for, third, fourth round guys at the guard position. That's what I'm bracing for. Okay. What do you say? It's going to take a little time, but should we go through and do a little bit of John Schneider trades? I kind of think we should. I know we're an hour and 17 minutes into the show, but I'm curious about it. I'm going to want to do it. So I'm going to do it. You guys can stick around. You can take off whatever you want to do. I get it. But I would like to look at some John Schneider trades. And let's go ahead and what do we do here? I'm going to do it on this Google sheet. So let's go ahead and let me pull up Seahawks trade history. There's all these different sites. Let's see if this is a decent one. Okay. I'm only looking for first round pick move backs or because it's not going to be move ups. So I'm going to be looking for the Seahawks moving back in the first round. Okay. So here we go. This is 2019. It's 2019, and the Seahawks traded pick 21 to Green Bay for the 30th pick and the 114th pick and the 118th pick. Something's off there, but let's see. Also 2019, they traded the 30th pick to the Giants for the 37th pick. These don't sound familiar, but I'm going to trust what's on the Seahawks website. The 132nd pick and the 142nd pick. Okay, so they traded back twice there. I'm not going to do the third round pick trades. Maybe we'll come back. Okay. In 2018, I'm going to go do the points for this afterwards. So I'll tell you how these trades worked out points wise via the Rich Hill trade value chart. So we can kind of get a feel for like what does John Schneider expect in trade back value, and that'll give us an indication of what he might accept if trading back in the first round this year. So that's what we're doing here. So 2018, he traded the 18th pick and the 248th pick in the 7th round to Green Bay. God, he trades a lot with Green Bay for the 27th pick, the 76th pick, and the 186th pick. That's a good one for us to pay attention to. The 18th pick and 248th pick for the 27th pick, the 76th pick, and the 186th pick. Similar range to where they are now. They only got a 3rd round and a 6th round pick for moving back that year. But we'll take a look at that one. Let's keep going. 2017. This one's going to be a busy one, and it's going to piss me off. I'm just telling you right now, it's going to piss me off. I was pissed when it was happening. I'm still pissed now. You could say this series of trades was part of what really got us in this position in the first place of being a non-contending team. All right. First, they took the 26th pick and they traded that to Atlanta for the 31st pick and the 95th pick and the 249th pick. And if you're curious, just player-wise there, Atlanta moved up and got Tack McKinley. I won't tell you about the 31st pick because we're going to move back from there again. But the Seahawks ended up with Delano Hill and Chris Carson. So essentially, well, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. So next, they moved back again. So now they had 31 now. They traded 31 to the 49ers. You bastard. You can't do that. Traded the 49ers for pick 34 and pick 111. So they have parlayed pick 26 into pick 34, pick 95, pick 111, and pick 249. They weren't done though. I've got to kind of finish this little move through. They traded back 3 times. They traded back the 34th pick. So now I'm cheating. I'm doing a 2nd round pick. They traded back 34 to Jacksonville for pick 35, so move back 1, and a 6th round pick, 187. You might think, oh, well, like, of course, move back 1 pick to pick up a 6th round pick. Jacksonville picked Cam Robinson at 34. It's very good tackle. The Seahawks, they got Malik McDowell, as we all know, with the 35th pick, and they got Mike Tyson with that 187th pick. Absolutely ridiculous. God, that makes me pissed off. the people that were picked with the Seahawks selections that they traded: Tack McKinley, Reuben Foster, Cam Robinson, and again, we all know who was picked after. What the Seahawks got for these trade backs was Malik McDowell, Delano Hill, Chris Carson, 7th rounder, but great pick, Tedrick Thompson, and Mike Tyson. Trading back. If you want a lesson on why trading back is not always the answer, there you go. All right. Let's go back to 2016. We're not going to go through all of John Schneider's first round pick trade backs, but let's pick up at least a little bit more. He takes the 26th pick, trades that to Denver for pick 31 and pick 94, a 3rd round pick. That turned out to be a decent move because Denver picked Paxton Lynch at that pick, and the Seahawks got Jermaine Ifedi and Nick Vannett. Not the best thing in the world, but, whatever. Let's see. Well, let's go back to 2013. 2013, they trade pick 25 and pick 214. Oh, no. This is for a player. This is a Percy Harvin trade. We're not doing that. 2012. Let's do 2012. Seahawks traded pick 12 to Philadelphia for pick 15, pick 114, and pick 172. Worth noting, that's a trade that people don't talk about enough. Philadelphia picked Fletcher Cox with that 12 pick. The Seahawks picked Bruce Irvin. They got Jay Howard and Jeremy Lane as 2 additional picks. Bruce Irvin, Jay Howard, and Jeremy Lane do not equal Fletcher Cox. That is a classic difference between blue chip and some quality starters. You're just not elevating your team. Elevating your team is adding Fletcher Cox. Elevating your team is not adding Bruce Irvin. I love Bruce Irvin, but he is not a blue chip player. All right. We're going to I think that's all of the first round pick trades that John Schneider has made to move back. Let's go ahead and run that through with the Rich Hill trade value chart, okay? Okay. So the 2019 pick 21 is worth 261 points. And what they got back was pick 30, which is worth 196. Oops. Plus pick 114, which is worth 26. Plus pick 118, which is worth 24. So they had 261 points in value with the 21st pick. They got 246 points in value back. They gave up 15 points in value. 15 points is the equivalent of a high 5th round pick. So this is a pretty desperate move, in my estimation, to move back, as opposed to sticking and picking. Similarly, that year, 2019, they traded pick 30, which was worth 196 points. And what did they get back? They got pick 37, which is worth 162, plus 100 pick 132, which is worth 17, and pick 142, which is worth 14. That was -3 points in value. So they had 196 points. They got 193 back. So again, John Schneider making a move back where he is giving up more value because he so much wants to add picks. That's not surprising to me. Let's move to 2018. 2018 gave up the 18th pick, which is worth 287 points, plus the 248th pick, which is worth 1 point. And by the way, for people that say, hey, 7th round pick, that's worth, it doesn't matter if the difference is just a 7th round pick, who cares? Then why do teams include them? They absolutely matter. They might not matter as much, but they matter. So for some reason, the Seahawks needed to include that 7th round pick, which is worth only 1 point, but it mattered to the team they were trading with. What they got back was the 27th pick, which is worth 216 points, plus the 76th pick, which is worth 61 points, plus the 186th pick, which is worth 7 points. So the Seahawks in this case had 288 points of trade pick value, and they got back 284 points. Again, -4 points. That is worth a low 2nd round pick. So 3 trades so far, 3 trade backs so far in the 1st round, each one of them being a deficit, a negative return value. No one's paying a premium so far to move up for the Seahawks pick. This is a little bit like being too thirsty and everybody knowing it and no one being attracted to you because you're too desperate. I mean, if everybody knows that they don't have to give up enough value to move up for you, that you're the patsy, I guess, then people are like, oh, sweet, the Seahawks want to trade back. We're going to be able to do it on the cheap. Let's keep going, though. Maybe it gets better. We're into the 2017 mode, so yikes, but let's go. They traded the 26th pick, which was worth 223 points. They got back the 31st pick, which is worth 190, plus 95, which is worth 40, plus 249, which is worth 1. Hey, they traded 223 points and they got 231 points back. That is an 8-point win for the Seahawks. That is worth a high 6th round pick. All right. So good. And by the way, I was okay with that. I was not thrilled with it at the time, but that first trade back I was okay with. It's the next 2 that started getting me angry. 31st pick was worth 190 points. Yeah, 190 points. They got back the 34th pick, which is worth 175. And they got the 111th pick, which is worth 28. Well, by trade value, they traded 190 points and they got 203 points back in value. That is a 13-point win for John Schneider in that trade. That is the equivalent of a high 5th round pick. That's his biggest win so far, at least by trade value. But he wasn't done. I said I was going to stick with 1st round trade backs, but this was a series. This was a string of what he did in that. So this is the last of the 3 trade backs he made. He traded the 34th pick, which is worth 175. He traded and got the 35th pick back, which is 170, and got 187, which is worth 6 points. This was, he had 175 points. He got 176 points back. That is a 1-point win for John Schneider. So each of those 3 trades were wins from a trade value perspective, but this is a ideal example of just winning trades on value does not mean that you win in building a great team. So you can add picks, like analytics will say, get as many picks as you can. And in some ways that gets you where, like, yes, you could have every pick in the 7th round if you want, but that's not a way to build a team. So this is multiple trade backs to acquire multiple picks. They had pick 26. They turned pick 26 into pick 35, pick 95, pick 249, pick 111, pick 187. So they got a lot more picks out of this. And in this case, you could say you turn one of those top 100 picks into 2, and 3, it turned into 3 top 150 picks instead of 1. So, like, that's kind of a thing we talk about, but they ended up really blowing it on that draft. As good as that year was for drafting for the Saints, that's how bad it was for the Seahawks. They just absolutely blew that draft. All right, let's keep going. 2 more trades to look at. 2016, they traded the 26th pick. We know that is worth 223 points because they've traded it before. They got the 31st pick back, which is worth 190. They've gotten the 31st pick quite a few times. And they got pick 94 in that trade. That is worth 41. That is an 8-point win for the Seahawks. That is a high 6th round pick. So that is 4 trade backs that were wins for the Seahawks. That's good after the losses to start. 2012, the last one, they had pick 12, which was worth 347. And they got back pick 15, which is worth 315. Pick 114, which is worth 26. And pick 172, which is worth, where'd that go? There it is. 9 points. Sorry, it's below my view. So they had 347 points in value. They got 350 points back. That is a 3-point win for the Seahawks. That is the equivalent of a high 7th round pick. So I think what's cool here, looking at this is John Schneider trades. And moving back in the first round. The trend is for his first number of years, like 2010 to 2017, he had a lot of victories. Now, they were small victories in most cases. His first 2017 trade back from 31 to 34 plus 111 was his largest victory. That was a 13-point victory. That's a big one. But he had 2 8-point victories in there. But they were all relatively positive for the Seahawks from a trade value perspective. Since then, he's made 3 trades, 1 in 2018, 2 in 2019. He has been at negative value in each one of those, according to the trade value chart. And the worst of them was 2019, where he had a 15-point loss in moving from 21 back to 30 and getting 2 4th-round picks. That is a move out of desperation to add picks. He just wanted to move back. He couldn't find anything better. They did it. Now, the other piece that I'll say here is that this Rich Hill trade value chart, I think, is holding up. These are most of these trades. What is it? 6 out of the 8 trades that we talked about here were within 10 points of value. So if you go back and remember, we were talking about some of these trade value scenarios on Friday or Saturday, whenever it was. And we're talking about 17-point differences, 30-point differences, 40-point difference. Those aren't going to happen. Like, you're going to be talking about trades most likely that are 10-point differences or less in most cases in looking at the Seahawks' ability to move back. So I think that's, again, limiting the idea that they're going to be able to get a 2nd-round pick. They're going to have to move well down the first round to do it. And you're going to have to be most likely giving up all the guys we've been talking about. I don't think you're going to get Jared Verse, Byron Murphy, Graham Barton. Maybe you'll get Johnny Newton. You could be talking about like the Chop Robinsons, maybe. So like you're going well down your list by doing that just to get that second round pick. As I sit here right now, and I've gone back and forth, if you get a great deal to move down to like 22, I think it makes sense. But at this point, I think the best way for the Seahawks to become a better team is to stick at 16 and take the best guy that's available there. I think they're going to get a chance at a difference-making player at 16. I am struggling to see them be able to do that as much if they move back. Leaves a lot to chance, and that has not worked out particularly well for the Seahawks. So that is a large trip through. We just went through a bunch of mock drafts. We went through all the 30 visits as well as the combine visits. We went through all of John Schneider's first round trade backs and what he got. I want to really ask everybody to give the show a like, click subscribe, and click on the link to become a YouTube member. It's in the chat. It's pinned. It's in the description of the video. It's easy to become. And we are in the process of planning our draft party for our suite level members. So if you want to join and be a suite level member, it's not too late. We're going to do a virtual online draft conversation. We're going to schedule that soon. We'll probably do a post-draft review and conversation with folks that are in the suite level. So absolutely encourage you to do that. Club level folks get the chance to ask questions in the live show as well. Hawks Nest members are fantastic. You still get the emblem on your name, so we see that you are a member. We'll respond to your comments as quickly as we can. And also, you get access to fun things like the custom emojis that only YouTube members get access to. And of course, go over to patreon.com/hawkblogger. That is where you get the audio versions of all these podcasts. And depending on what level you are, if you are a Ring of Honor member there, or you are a sponsor or any of those levels, you'll also get invited to the draft party and those kind of fun things. But otherwise, if you're just a tried and true Patreon member, which we really value, you get access to the Slack channel immediately, and you get these to ask us questions every week for the Real Hawk Talk show. We do that in the Slack channel most often, and you get the audio version. So a bunch of good stuff for Patreon folks. Appreciate it. If you have things that you would like to hear about, please let me know. I do pay attention to what's going on in chat and in comments and appreciate all that. Coming up later today, do not forget, 4 p.m. Pacific time, we will be doing a mock draft madness with Nathan Ernst and Jeff Simmons, and we will be selecting for every team. Each of us will take about 10 teams that we're responsible for. We will make every pick. I think we're going to learn a ton. It's going to be great. So 4 p.m. Pacific time today. Tune in for that. Tomorrow, fantastic show. Robert Mays will be on to talk Seahawks from The Athletic. Just a great person to have on, as well as Sam Monson from PFF. Two great guests starting at 7:15. Wednesday, Aaron Schatz, the inventor of DVOA, will be on to join us Wednesday morning. And Eric Edholm, I think we're going to get on Friday, is what it's looking like. I will let you know for sure from NFL.com. So we'll continue getting a lot of great guests, and appreciate you guys supporting and tuning in along the way. All right, folks, I'm going to let you have a great rest of your day. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at HawkBlogger. And this has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Have a wonderful rest of your day.